Okay, I'm going to do part 2 of laughing at myself in relation to the 8 worldly concerns. So I'm going to start off with a story. When I was about 23, I was living in Edmonton and living the bohemian lifestyle, I thought, and happy taking the bus and walking everywhere, and my parents were freaking out. I was raised in a small town. So they immediately got me a second-hand car, a little 1979, I think, Toyota Corolla. And it was a very sweet little car. It was sky blue in color, and I fell in love with it pretty quickly. And, I knew nothing about cars other than driving my parents' cars and, trucks and putting dents in all of them. So I was inspired to take more care with this one. But I noticed over time, over many months, and I was the only driver for many months, that I would always have to correct by constantly pulling the steering wheel left. And I just thought this was a feature of the car. I thought it was normal. This is what this old car does. It keeps veering for the ditch. And I had no money, and I certainly wasn't going to take it to the mechanic, but this I thought was normal. This is just normal. So one day, a friend of mine, I think I was sick, and maybe I was getting a ride home from somewhere, and I don't remember exactly who it was, but anyway, the person knew more about cars than I did, and they said, "Hey, don't you know this car needs a wheel alignment?" And I said, "What?" "A wheel alignment." I said, "Why? There's nothing wrong with it." We said, "Look how I'm steering. I'm pulling the car to the left all the time. You just need to take it into the garage and get a wheel alignment." So I'm thinking money I don't have, and I didn't do it for a very long time until there was a close call. But eventually I got it in, and so I learned about wheel alignments. And it was the same thing with, the 8 worldly concerns. Honestly, this is how I lived my life until I met the Dharma. This was just normal. This was a prescription. If you asked me what my religious path was, I probably would have said, had I known, well, 8 worldly concerns. Isn't it true for you? Wasn't it true for you? It was true for me. Maybe you're all, I don't know who you are. So I'll just tell you how it was for me. So in the last BBC that I gave, we did the first 2 pairs. Now we're going to do the second 2 pairs. And we're going to start off with praise and approval and criticism and disapproval. Our favorite one, maybe, right? So I'm going to start off with some wisdom from His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Venerable Children from the Foundation of Buddhist Practice. And there's a beautiful whole big section on the 8 worldly concerns in this book. I think it starts on page 192 and goes to about 203. So it's fabulous. So let's see here. What do I want to do? Got this marked. Okay. So I'm going to have to put on my ugly glasses again. Of course, I'm not worried about how I look. Praise and approval, criticism and disapproval. We love when people we like comment on our good qualities or competent work, and we become depressed when they point out our faults, criticize us, or blame us for things we may or may not have done. Due to this delight and dejection, our emotions vacillate drastically, as does our self-image. True? True. In an effort to win the approval of others and avoid their disapproval, we may sacrifice our ethical standards to win their favor, succumb to peer pressure to fit in, and make unwise decisions that have long-term consequences. In the hopes of winning someone's approval, we try to become what we think they think we should be. In the process of doing so, we lose touch with what we really think and feel, and live in fear of accidentally doing something that would annoy the other person and garner their criticism. Well, I don't know about you, but that certainly describes my teenage years. And some may even say the anagarika period and the first 8 or 10 years of ordained life, depending on the person and who is giving the call on that one. So if you're wondering if you do struggle with praise and aversion to criticism, the first thing you must do the next time you have the chance is to cook lunch. This will be the test ground for this. So cooking at the Abbey, I didn't know it was a place where I'd be seeking praise, because I just basically eat to live, and I'd like it to be tasty, what I cook. But I would say, in my experience, we've got a 50% chance of making half the people happy here every time we cook. So the marathon starts around 9 o'clock if you're me, or maybe 8:30, or maybe the day before, or some of you start the week before. And keep in mind that the choices that we present have to include, and help me if I've missed one, gluten-free, dairy-free, no beans, some beans, has-beens. Now, has-beens, is that a fruit or a vegetable? Tell me now. Fruit or vegetable, has-beens. You're wrong. It's a person. It's an abstract composite. Tofu, no tofu. Satan. That's how it should. Satan. That's a really nasty one. Tomatoes, no tomatoes. Spicy, bland. Make not enough of some of those dishes, or you make too much. And if you make too much, we all know that you get to hear about that for the rest of your monastic life. And then, of course, we all know that nobody here can cook quinoa. And this is announced in BBC's on live stream teachings. It goes worldwide. Nobody here knows how to cook quinoa. It's sticky and gooey. So depending on the size of the group that you're cooking for, no cabbage, no rice. Rice for some, rice, sorry? No citrus, no soy, no oil, no vegetables. So, on the off chance that things work well in the kitchen, and you get it all ready right at the time where the BBC is going to start, and everything is in good shape, you've got it on the table, it looks good, then the person giving the BBC that day goes for about 35 minutes. And then anything that might have been warm, forget it. It's just cold and gooey and sticky. Then, of course, if you really want to know how it is when you cook and you see a long line headed for the toaster and the peanut butter and jam, that's a pretty good indication that people are starving and your offering just didn't do it. Or you got it all together, there's not much of a lineup on that particular day at the toasters, and the person that you know likes only white things or yellow things, and you've got finally something on that movable cart that they will eat, you discover they've gone for 2 weeks personal leave. So it's a bit of a test for praise, and then every now and then you get this. A lot of time you see eyes averted. You know, so that would be the test. Oh, and then of course you're in the lineup and someone asks, well, where's the protein? We're in silence, of course, but the question blurts out, where's the protein? Or they look at what's on the table and they ask for ketchup on things you would never put ketchup on. So, there you go. So as we know, seeking praise and approval is a total merry-go-round. It just turns us into crazy people. It turns me into crazy person. And so it brings me back to some advice I heard very early on. It was fantastic and actually stuck in my head. I can't say I've realized it yet, but I'm doing my best. Very early on, Venerable Children told us, you know, you should be concerned about what the wise ones think, right? That is such great advice. I try to bring it to mind. Now, I'm going to give a worldly example right now of something I heard recently, which is a worldly example, but it'll lead into something, you know, I think helpful. I was recently at a celebration of my aunt's life, and she had 9 children. She was not Catholic. And so Shirley was always smiling, always laughing. She had this huge heart. She didn't complain about the fact she had 9 kids. You know, there was never any of that mind going. And at this celebration, I wasn't at this particular dinner, but one of her daughters was about to get married for the second time. The first marriage wasn't good, the guy wasn't nice. So here, and I'm sure you've had this feeling, you know, meeting your boyfriend or girlfriend's parents for the first time, or maybe you're meeting the family that you're hoping to marry into, and it's the family dinner, right? Yeah, it's fun. So then at one point, apparently, Shirley leans over to this fellow who's hoping to marry her 3rd oldest daughter. And she wasn't smiling at this point, which is very unusual. And she's not very tall, about 5'3", but she leaned in to this fellow in front of everybody. She said, "If you hurt my child, you hurt me. So I guess the guy was like, and that was quiet for quite some time at this meal that I'm sure there were about 35 people at, 9 kids. Well, there's probably 65, who knows. So that got his attention. She picked a good one. He was a good guy. He's still a good guy. He never forgot the advice. So in the same way, the Buddhas are talking to us all the time. Okay, they're talking to me all the time. I'm sure you hear it. I don't. You hurt my child, you hurt me. Hello. So you hurt my child, you hurt me. So it's not like the Buddhas are hurt, but we're hurting our relationship with the holy beings, right? And we're hurting ourselves. We're putting obstacles on the spiritual path and really creating a lot of negative karma and making ourselves miserable and likely everyone else around us at the same time. So great advice from Venerable Children, from the Buddhas, and from Shirley Spoor. Thank you, Shirley. So it's best to drop this whole thing to attachment to praise and blame. It's a huge time waste. We're using our precious human rebirth in such a nonsensical way. And just worry about what the wise ones think. And if you don't know who the wise ones are, well, ask somebody who's wise. Okay. More from His Holiness and Venerable Children. So in relation to praise and approval and aversion to blame, His Holiness and Venerable Children say, I've found that it's better for everyone to be involved in sincere, frank, and natural with others. I show what I am and do not pretend to be otherwise, no matter what others think or say about me. Being free of attachment to praise and reputation gives us the ability to relate as one human being to another. So let's just be natural. I was going to read something else, but in light of time, I think I'll just direct you to read the top of page 196 in this book. Okay, the last one, sense pleasures. Okay, so you might not have guessed it, unless you've been here, but it's highly possible to develop hypothermia in Shenrezi Hall and Gotami House. So what happens is it's about 97 degrees outside and you come in and it's 67 probably if it's working well, and it absolutely feels freezing. So we've got two choices, right? I mean, we're constantly satisfying our senses. So you either complain about it to others, they don't want to hear it, or you just put on a hat and winter clothes. No problem. It's August. All right. There's so many things that I can talk about with the sense pleasures. You can sit on the cushion and bring up your own examples. Read this first. But then the last one I want to bring up, and this is not directed at you, Venerable Children, at all. So you heard me say it. You heard it. I said it. This is not for you. There's a lot of fussing with this headset. Have you noticed? There's a lot of fussing. It doesn't fit my head. It's going up my nose. It's going in my mouth. I don't like it. Yeah, it's gouging out my eye. It's against my cheek. What's wrong with this headset? Somebody fix it. There's all this fussing. So there's a solution here. It's an omnidirectional mic. Is it still picking up the sound? Right? Okay. So for those of you who are feeling really bent out of shape with this microphone, is it still picking up the sound? Yeah? It's okay? So here's the option here. It's a little bit of blue tape. Now, with this apparatus on like this, you can wear glasses. You can have ear sets on. The blue, if you have blue eyes, it will accent the blue in your eyes, which the camera will pick up. And then on the off chance we get invited to Buckingham Palace, then we've got the head do to meet Queen Elizabeth, right? Because you have to go with a hat. And so there you go. We're all set. So, is it still picking up the sound? So these 8 worldly concerns. Would it be disrespectful? Probably would be if I read from this and with this on my head. So I'm just going to... Okay, I don't want to be disrespectful to the teaching, so I'm going to take it off. In conclusion, this is really beautiful. And since beginningless time, we've been practicing this, so let's have a sense of humor about this. Let's go easy. We're not going to change by Saturday or by the time you get back home, EML people. You shave your head, you put on robes, guess what? Although seeking the 8 worldly concerns seems to bring us happiness superficially, in the long term it brings more misery. The 8 worldly concerns make our viewpoint very narrow and self-centered. We become blind to karma. We become blind to karma and its effects and ignore the need to create the causes for well-being in future lives. Aspiring to liberation or awakening is far from our mind. The 8 worldly concerns obstruct us from genuine Dharma practice. Put that on the mirror, except there's no room anymore. The mirrors are covered. I can't even see myself. Most of our distractions in meditation involve the 8 worldly concerns. When our mind wanders while listening to teachings, our attention has strayed to one of these 8. We postpone positive deeds, such as generosity or helping others, because our time is occupied with these 8. For these reasons, Dharma practitioners are warned about seeking the temporary happiness of only this life, not because it is bad or sinful, but because it impedes us from actualizing the spiritual realizations that will bring long-term happiness. Thank you, His Holiness Dalai Lama and Venerable Children and all of these teachers for making this clear for us and helping us.